Brake booster master cylinder kit all set up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get our engine and transmission where we want it. Two things you're really going to pick up at the same time you get your brake booster kit is you want to get your automatic transmission cross member. What this will do is give you enough clearance for the brake booster to be right here. Another thing I always like to get is the remote reservoir kit. It's a real drag to climb underneath there and check the brake fluid from time to time. So what you do is you get a new cap right here. You get the lines. You get the remote reservoir that you can mount in different places. Sometimes I'll put it in the cap. In this instance, we're just going to put it on the firewall, keep everything nice and simple. So be sure you pick these items up at the same time. You just make your job a little bit easier and your future life a little bit easier too. They even give you all the bolts that come with the transmission cross member. You can't get better than that. With the engine and tranny pretty much mocked up where you want it, we're going to take our transmission cross member and actually bolt it to the transmission. Then we'll go ahead and get our tape measure out, and we'll double check to make sure that the transmission's exactly where we want it. We've got a plate underneath the transmission and jacked it up. You put your ends on first and then go ahead and bolt it to the transmission. Then we'll get it dialed in exactly where we want it. So I've trimmed about an inch off of both sides. So now what's going to happen is we're going to slide it in underneath the frame like this. So this will be on top of the frame, and when we're positioning our engine and tranny, we can move it back and forth. Now it looks something like this. Okay, so here you can see it slides back and forth. What I'll do is I'll bolt it to the transmission, and then I'll be able to slide everything back and forth and get it exactly where I want it. We double checked all of our measurements, everything's cool. And the reason that we do this first is because the rubber mount down right here will kind of squish down with the weight of the transmission on there. So we're going to need this transmission located exactly where we want it in order to be able to get the engine exactly where we want it. So we'll do our transmission first, and then we go from there. These clips typically get mangled over the years. So you go and get the newest style C-clips. This is a 7/8 hole right here. Our brake booster's all mounted up. We've got everything all set. So now what we're going to do is start on our hard lines. But in order to see where our hard lines are going to go, we need to bolt up our front suspension parts. And you'll get a weld-on tab. It's just like this. You set her on here. You get your clip and put it on. And then we can see that our tab will fit real nice right here. Take it up a little bit, make clearance for the lower control arm. So we'll stick our tab right there, and then we'll have good clearance for everybody. Brake booster all set up. We've got our brakes all attached, and we've got our welded tabs where we want them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up our remote reservoir and our hard brake lines. Okay, so on the back right here, this is going to be for your rear. On your proportioning valve, this rear is for your back brakes. So we'll just do a 90-degree right here and attach it to the brake line. Here on the front, we can run out of the porthole that is either on this side right here, next to the frame, or we can run it on the outside over here. It has a plug that we're going to put on the outer side because it's going to be easier to run our brake line from here, the one that's closest to the frame. So we'll just go straight down here, a 90-degree bend, go forward to our front. Now here's a kit for doing a double flare. You can also do an AN fitting, which just stands for Army Navy, which is what originally came up with the AN fittings. But I just go with the standard double flare kit just because it's nice and easy. You can typically pick this up at the swap meet for a good price, or Pet Boys, what have you. First thing we'll do is we'll pull out our pipe cutter and we'll cut ourselves off a section a little bit longer than we think we need. And you're going to slowly rotate this around, and this handle here tightens. So you'll slowly tighten it, take it around a couple of times, tighten a little bit more, wrap it around, and just keep doing that until it pops right off. What we're going to do now is going to go ahead and flare our end. Make sure you put your fitting on, make sure that it's facing the right way. We'll take our clamp here. Typically the rule of thumb is you take your piece that goes in the top and you flip it upside down and you get it about even right there like that. So you take this piece back and we'll set it right on top like that. We'll take this right here and tighten it down. We're not going to tighten this down until it always smashes. We're going to tighten it down until it starts to mushroom right down in here. And then we're going to take this back off, take this piece out, and now we're going to screw this piece and push our mushroom head down. And again, don't smash anything. We just want everything nice and firm, because if you get it smashed, then it'll be too tight. So ideally, you want that when you tighten it down and it makes contact with whatever you're screwing it onto, that's when it'll smash down the rest of the way, so to speak. So now we'll take this and turn it into a 90-degree. Okay, here's our 90 degrees, all done. Got our coupler. Now what we'll do is we'll work on our brake line going to the front. And we're going to go straight from here, and we're going to measure how far to the frame. So we've got about 8 inches there. So we'll work with that. So we'll simply get our pipe, and then we'll measure just a hair under 8 inches. So here is our 7 3/4 inch mark. And so that it ends up in the right place, what we do is we line this line up with the L right here, so that when we bend it, our overall length will be 7 3/4. Now what I like to do is on the brackets, it's got a hole right there. So I'm going to send my brake lines straight on through this hole right here. So we're actually going to bolt this in, and we can see that we got it right nudged against the frame, but we're not smashed up against it or anything. Okay, so I've run my pipe, run my brake line straight through my opening here where it's protected. Now here you can just lightly bend this with your fingers, but you want to make sure you don't get a kink. You want to make sure we're not rubbing up against any pieces here, and we want to make sure we don't rub up against the edge right here, so that when we go ahead and we leash this down, we're not jagging up against this hard corner here. Now we'll go ahead and we'll map out the rest of the way.